October meeting of the Glendale Planning and Historic Preservation Commission. Becky, would you note for the record that we do have a quorum? I believe we're missing 2 folks today, is that right?
No, just Beth.
Just Beth? Okay.
Leslie's down here hiding.
Oh, there she is. She's not behind her name tag. I saw her come in, I just didn't see her behind her name tag. All right, we'll begin as always with approval of the minutes. I'll note for the record that we've already approved the August minutes, so we're really just acting on the September 8 meeting minutes. What's your pleasure?
I move that we accept the minutes as submitted.
Second?
Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Becky. All right, let's go on to old business. We have one item there. It's the request of Zachary Barnett at 1100 Congress for a new fence. Is Mr. Barnett here? If you mind, welcome to Glendale, first and foremost. We've all had a chance to look at your plans, but you can tell us as much as you like or as little as you like, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be in the neighborhood. Nice to meet everybody. My name's Zach. This is my wife Annie back here, and our 7-month-old daughter Penelope.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just moved in last month, and we're looking to put a fence in the backyard. It's just it's really close to the road. Been around the neighborhood. There's a few other homes that have similar style fence. So we're just looking to kind of box in our backyard. We have 2 kind of tinier dogs too, so just make it a little bit more safe for our daughter and our dogs. Yeah, it's have somebody lined up to do it. Could probably do it in a few weeks. They were waiting to get the green light for this, so whatever, any concerns you have, I'm happy to address them, I guess, but hopefully I try to make it as straightforward as possible.
No, that's fine.
So the screen on the inside of the fence, is that gonna be a vinyl or a metal or?
It's like a
treated
mesh
metal?
wiring around the whole edge of
Is
the
it
fence.
gonna
Yep.
be black or green or what?
Black.
Good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's turkey, this is normally it's called turkey fencing with the little square boxes?
Yes. I believe
Okay.
so.
I didn't know that was called turkey.
Yeah. You mean I added value? Okay.
Chicken ears like a tag on it. All right, anything else from members of the commission?
Do you have any kind of like car gates on the thing or just a passenger gate? Any double gates for that?
No.
Just
So
one single?
so actually what we're doing is, so the fence is gonna be like 3/4 of the backyard, and then
Okay.
in the back where our driveway is, so where the back line is,
Right.
you can see the driveway there. So we're gonna try to match, we're gonna get just like a portable fencing, something we can just kind of stick in the ground to match the wiring. And the reason being, at some point, the thought would be like maybe putting a garage there. So I don't wanna, like if we need that space in the back to where the fence would be, I don't wanna put the fence in and then tear it out at some point. So that would be maybe the only thing to call out, but, you know, that's basically what we'd be looking at.
Future.
I'm sorry?
For the future?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's gonna attach to the house on both sides,
Yes.
4 feet, and yeah, I think as long as you use, the green temporary posts that they use for wire fences,
Mm-hmm.
and do the same wire.
Yeah.
How long do you think till you get to the garage, or is that a dream at this point?
Maybe, I think we're gonna be in the house a long time, so maybe in the next 10 years. If I hit the lottery next year, how about that?
Yeah.
And that'll just run across the entrance to your driveway, is that it? The temporary fence?
Yeah, just from left to right there,
Oh, across.
all the way
that
across,
way.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is 2 parallel fences with metal posts and fencing in between. So how,
Different style.
okay,
What will it look like then?
It'll just be probably just, I'm gonna try to match the mesh fencing wiring that goes around the fence, as best as possible, but it's just called like no dig fence. You just kind of stake it in the ground all the way across. It's kind of just a portable fence.
It's like at the Dog Depot.
yeah,
Yes, yeah, it's for gardens and Just something mainly to box it in for our dogs, especially. So that'll be a huge help.
I think as long as I'm just trying to clarify, as long as we denote that as a temporary, that back piece.
10-year temporary.
Just because in case someone else comes and proposes to put a fence like that in.
Is that
we would've-
appropriate for a temporary fence in that location of the
I'm
yard?
not crazy about it, because it's gonna be for such a long time. I think if you're talking about that amount of time to amortize the cost of putting that in permanently across there over 10 years is not a big expense to go ahead and put it in a nice gate and stuff. And then when you do your garage, you may not have to move it at all.
Sure.
And if you do, you do, but a 10-year temporary fence is not, in my opinion,
I
not
think
a good idea.
the visibility from Congress is gonna be pretty high.
Not from Congress.
From the lake.
From the lake.
Lake.
Yeah.
No,
But
plus
you're gonna
that
be
stuff's
driving
gonna
on
be
Congress,
all
so
over the place. It's
you will
not
be
gonna
driving by, it'll be
Well,
there.
we have other places in the village where people have posts and fencing. The only issue is this appropriate because of it's a bit more visible?
More visible.
Yeah.
So, my participation in this meeting is limited, but can your fence, provider, can they simulate this but make it temporary? In other words, use the posts but have the wood, slats,
Mhm.
and then you put your wire on that, so it looks similar to the rest of the fence. But
Sure. Okay.
do the temporary idea that way.
Instead of no, that I think I follow. I could definitely ask and see if that's something he could quote, or if that's something that I could just put in myself in the back, as close to what you're recommending.
Well, these guys would have to recommend it, it's just
Yeah,
a thought I had, that way, from a visibility standpoint,
Right.
it's similar to that, but it can still be removed later if he wants to remove
Did you
it.
get a quote on running it?
I did not. No,
Why
we're
don't
kind
you get a
of
quote on running it across from that corner to corner
sure.
with a people gate, and you may be surprised. if you
It's
really
probably
think about
cheaper
it.
than to do it that, just install it, than it is to do the temporary thing,
Yeah.
cause there's more parts to a temporary
Sure.
style.
Yeah. No. Okay.
Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to approve what you've come with for just the two sides.
Sure.
And then we'll approve that, and then you come back with a plan for actually what you wanna do in the back.
Unless you wanna go across with a permanent fence with a people gate, then we approve that also.
Yeah,
Okay.
Approve that
Okay.
tonight,
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can either, on the back, you have two, here, I'll make a motion. I move that we approve, all three sides as Kentucky fencing. And, with adding a people gate at the back.
Mhm.
The alternative is just do the two sides and come back to us with a specific plan for the third side.
Sure. Yeah. You can definitely do that. I can talk to the fence installer and see what it would be like just to close it in the back
Yeah.
to what you're suggesting. I definitely would want to price that out first. We're kind of working with a kind of constrained budget.
We
there,
all
so-
understand, we've
Yeah,
all
yeah,
been
yeah.
there at some point, we've
Yeah.
all been newly married, have children, and not have enough money to do everything you
Sure.
want to.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, I said, hey, I have this much.
So,
What can you
yeah.
do? And
So you can do what you want to, and then just come back to us with something, right?
yeah. Okay.
Right?
Understood. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Anyone in the audience wish to address this application? Further discussion, members of the commission, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Maybe we'll see you next month. We meet the first Monday of every month.
Appreciate it.
Stay in touch with David.
Thank you.
Thank you, welcome to Glendale.
All right, let's move on to new business. The first request is of Chandra Wombles at 15 West Sharon for new signage. Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you all?
Good, good.
Chandra Womble, so I'll be opening a coffee shop up on Sharon Road at 15 West Sharon Road, owned by Mike Bessel. There was previously a coffee shop there that didn't work out, never ended up opening. So this is the signage that I submitted the application for. It'll be called Black Squirrel Cafe. We'll be serving coffee, pastries, baked goods, breakfast food, sandwiches. So I have this round sign that would be hung from an already existing bracket, and then I also have a decal that I would like to go above the doors.
Is it the bracket up high on the corner?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can
Yes.
see the bottom.
Yeah, you can kind of
Oh,
see
yeah,
it in
I
this
see.
picture.
I thought that's where it was.
And the decals go on the inside of the window or on the outside?
It would go above the door.
Oh, the transom?
Where it says Black Squirrel Cafe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but on that spot or
On
on
the
the
wood.
window?
On the wood.
On the wood?
Yes. On
Oh,
the wood.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had you looked at, I mean, you're just talking vinyl letters.
Mm-hmm.
You looked at or thought about like an acrylic or PVC or metal?
No, this is what the vinyl is what the fast sign companies that I'm working with recommended. The other alternative would be doing a metal sign, but since I'm already getting that round
Yeah.
sign that's going to be hanging, I thought this would look a little different.
I have no problem with it. I think it looks good.
Okay.
How is the vinyl sign attached?
The decals,
Yeah,
they just stick on.
That's the issue.
that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, this is old wood.
They look like
With-
crap, no time.
Well, yeah, you're gonna end up having to replace them.
They peel.
They peel. So,
So what if I put a backing, like if I had some sort of backing and then stuck it? Do you think that would help?
as long as it wasn't significant, well, first let me ask the question, David, does this meet all the requirements of the signage sign?
Yes.
Okay, so it is, as long as it's not, doesn't stick out more than a few inches on either side of the, and, you know, with you, let's put it this way, as long as it's no bigger than the space above and below on the other two sides, cause you can't go any, you don't wanna have it long on each side and narrow.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so as long as it doesn't, only sticks out a couple inches on either side, I think we'd be fine, wouldn't we, David, from a standpoint?
I
Yeah.
guess the other alternative, and I don't know if this is an option, could you seal it? Like, could you put a clear paint over it? Would that help from the peeling?
No, I think the idea of putting ask them what kind of backing they can put on it
Okay,
that will not peel, and then fasten the thing with the backing to
Right.
the wood,
Right.
okay.
because it's not gonna work putting it on,
Yeah.
just on
Okay.
the wood.
Trust those of us who have tried lots of things like this and failed miserably.
I was gonna do window decals, but I didn't really like the look of them, just because there are those wood lines in the middle, so it sort of broke up the words and the,
I think this is great, we just wanna save you from having to spend
yeah, no, that's fine.
a lot, and redo it.
And it will be
Yeah.
tacky within
You
6
you
months.
can just get a metal backing of some type and have it applied to the metal and then screw
Okay.
it up.
I would
Perfect.
definitely challenge them to make sure it's a contrasting background. So you
Yes.
can see the letters pop when you're driving by at 35 miles an hour. Cause if it's too close, they're just gonna look like
Yeah, you won't.
It'll blend,
either
yeah, you won't
two,
see it.
yeah, and there's several examples just around.
Okay,
That you'll just
Yeah.
wanna make sure you have them do a sample or two for you of different backings.
I
okay,
think the color of the pale yellow
Yes,
all around the perimeter.
right,
That would, with black lettering, that would pop.
Yeah.
okay,
yeah,
yeah, I
Right.
can do that.
that'd be great.
Any further comments or motion?
I move we accept the round signage as submitted and the vinyl, sign for over the door with an appropriate backing where it'll adhere to that backing for quite some time. I'll do it up to the sign company as to what that's made out of,
Okay,
and that's it.
Second,
Motion second. Is there anyone in the audience wishes to address this application?
That's a gorgeous squirrel sign.
thank you.
All right, members of the commission, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Welcome to Glendale. Good luck.
All right, thank you.
When do you
Thank
open?
So I'm hoping to open October 15th, but it's still tentative.
Okay, we'll be
So
there.
that'll be a Wednesday but I haven't set it in stone yet.
Okay.
So don't hold me to it.
That's fine. We'll be there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
We have one other item of new business that's to you, David.
Yep. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. No, we've discussed at a previous meeting the applicability of the village's zoning code, or specifically the guidelines to new construction. Right now, the way that our specifically the historic guidelines section is written, new construction is not listed explicitly as, or the guidelines rather, are not an explicit review mechanism for new construction. To put that language into the code would require a zoning code amendment. I've had conversations with the solicitor on how to best achieve that. There's some consideration as to go into how the guidelines would be applicable to that new construction. So to what extent, or to whether it would match what we currently do, or the guidelines, how the guidelines apply to existing construction. So that would need to be, that consideration would need to come out. But it is a zoning code amendment, so it would still need initiation either by petition, planning, or council. So it was, Chair, you had expressed interest in getting this before the commission. So I think there's some conversation as to whether or not there's interest in proceeding with the code amendment.
And David and I had this conversation. And as he said, I do want to get the ball rolling on this. In fact, if it's appropriate, I'd like to schedule a public hearing this time next month. by the
Let me
planning commission.
check we'll schedule it as soon as our notification, because if planning were to vote this evening to initiate it, I believe there's a 30-day notification period.
Okay.
So I don't know that we're necessarily going to make that
Well,
November
as soon as
3rd.
possible, let's put it
But
that
yes,
way.
it would be the next possible meeting.
And the drafting of the language, it can't be a heavy lift. I can imagine just one or two sentences added to the zoning code.
The solicitor and I will work on some language. We'll circulate it in advance of whenever that public hearing ends up getting scheduled.
All right. Anyone want to discuss this matter? Everybody understand this matter?
No.
No, you don't want to discuss it? No, you
I-
don't understand.
Could you clarify which part, is it just codifying the guidelines into the zoning code?
For new construction.
For new
For
construction.
new construction?
That's right.
Sorry, for the,
Is it?
It's the way that the way that our code is written currently for specifically when it talks about certificates of appropriateness and planning commission review. You have two distinct sections that apply. The first is the yeah. Give me 1 second. Let me pull it up. You have sections that apply to landmarks, pivotal buildings, and contributing buildings within the historic district, or not within the historic district if that's the case. Give me 1 second. Let me get this up. See if I can. Of course, it's decided to update just so I pull this up. All right. While that's going, if you look at section C of chapter 154.46, it reads design requirements and guidelines for existing landmark, pivotal, or contributing buildings. And then section D reads design requirements for new buildings in historic districts. So there is no written applicability for the guidelines against new construction as it exists in the code right now. There are additional references earlier on in that section about certificates of appropriateness and what specifically is required to receive one. So the design, but all of the language is consistent in that it does, whether it was intentional or perhaps accidental, it omits new construction as a reviewable item against the guidelines. Now, that does have the design requirements, which are the seven items, and they're up here on the screen, as easy as that is to read. Scale and massing materials, accessory buildings, chimneys, building footprint, site location, and garages. Those are the first set of review criteria, the only set of review criteria, but they're the most, in my opinion, most effective because they're fairly objective. They're mathematical. They're based on site conditions or calculations rather than the guidelines, which are a little bit, of course, more subjective and open to interpretation and preference. But the language would have to be updated to allow for the use of the guidelines here, as well as up in an earlier section where it talks about the applicability of the guidelines themselves, because as it reads here that the let me find my section.
Number one there.
Well, number one, yeah, it says owner of a pivotal building, and it goes on to say essentially that anyone who owns a building of essentially any kind must obtain a certificate of appropriateness. Now, if you're talking about new construction and you're not modifying an existing building, one of the questions that needs to be answered is, how does the guidelines apply to that? Right now written in the code, they don't, because you're talking about existing structures and not new structures. There are a couple other changes that the solicitor and I will navigate as we talk about potential changes to make the guidelines fully applicable to new construction as well. But I think it's also worth discussing the potential for, how thoroughly do we want the guidelines to apply to new construction
So
versus requirements.
Would it move up as a subset of, say, roll it back down a little bit? Would it be like where you start B, certificate of appropriateness, you have numbers,
Sorry.
one
Yes.
parentheses, and then down there, somewhere that D would move over into like number 4, parentheses, inset?
Where are you? I'm sorry.
Okay, so you got 3 design guidelines?
Yes.
And then would you insert a 4 and then move up the new construction section up under there? How were you thinking?
Well, that's one of the things that has to get navigated is the first change
We're
would
not doing that tonight, we're just
No,
conceptually
no.
talking.
Yeah, the first change would be here in D, so where it specifically talks about
Yeah.
new buildings.
Yeah, yeah.
And then where it talks about these design guidelines, the design guidelines supplement those requirements, but they are written as distinct from the requirements.
Yeah.
Well, for example, under C, you've got design requirements and guidelines for those existing buildings.
Correct.
You go to D and it only says design requirements for new buildings.
Yes,
It doesn't include the concept of the reference to the guidelines for new buildings.
right.
So I imagine it would sort of mirror that C. D would sort of mirror.
Yeah, move up a little bit.
But I'm for it, I don't wanna work, we're not working specifics.
No, we're not wordsmithing today, but,
I'd be for that.
right.
Okay.
And this would be for new construction within the historic district or new construction?
New construction within the historic district, because that's the planning commission's jurisdiction.
All right, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address this matter?
Yeah.
Miss Mayor,
Yeah, hi.
would you give your name for the record?
Yes, it's Julie Mayer. I live at 830 Woodbine, and we've been there for 28 years. My husband Kurt is here with me. I think that what you're talking about actually would be of interest to the residents here. I'm not sure the extent to which, if I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like you're looking to improve the wording of the ordinances that relate to construction, particularly to new construction. Just as a side note, the discussion that you just had is really not very resident friendly. There was just kind of a very technical discussion of what you were going to do, but if I hadn't just read the ordinances and been kind of looking at this material myself and struggling with it, as we've had some concerns about construction going in next door, I've had to make myself more knowledgeable about what's there and what's not there, and where things are. And one of the things that I would say, and I'm happy, by the way, to be part of a committee if you want to get something together as just somebody that kind of has like cold gone into this and had to deal with it. I think that there needs to be resident input as to how this area is laid out. We're talking about the single largest investment. We all have it in our homes, and it's woefully vague and inconsistent in our ordinance is related to a lot of things, but very definitely as it relates to the guidelines and requirements around things like the height of the building, 1 story versus 1.5 stories. And I mean, it's not only the fact that the definitions are kind of, sometimes vague or very technical, but there's even inconsistency in the way things are spelled. whether it's one dash story or one story or the word or the number one and then story. And I'm just picking that out as just an example. I don't know that that's technically correct, but let's just say, but I think you get my point, that if somebody like me who is concerned about something going on next door is looking these things up and trying to be an informed resident and using, I'm pretty good with Word, and so, I took all the ordinances and I searched things related to the concerns we had about the structure next door, and it took me the better part of a couple of days to make sure that I had fully checked out every possible variation of how things like that could be spelled. It's just not resident friendly. And actually, you're right, for the most part I found most of the information that was relevant, because we were looking, interested in the guidelines around accessory structures. Most of it is under ordinance 154.46, and I think it was C and D. I'm getting pretty good at it, but there was also references in other places like definitions and alluding to other structures and how tall they could be and things like that were in other places. So I just think in general, if there's no other category that you evaluate and clean up, this is definitely related to property rights and property gut, especially new construction. That this is definitely an area that should become a priority. When we have not only the building next door, but we have a neighbor, a relatively young family, I think, that's on a street a couple over from us, who puts in a garage. It's an accessory structure, if you can call it that, but it's actually, as big as many of the houses in Glendale, with a garage door that is as tall as a boat, and I think that was the intent. And then you have other people that are putting in an accessory structure that essentially has, I believe, from what I understand, running water into it, and yet it's, I'm not sure that that's up with the guidelines, that that's appropriate if it's an accessory structure. I could be wrong, but there are not only myself but other neighbors who have shared at parties with me concern about what it is that we're allowing to be put in as quote-unquote accessory structures, that, as we think about the historic value of our neighborhood, the value of our homes, we don't want to look like Montgomery, we don't want to look like these other neighborhoods where they mash in buildings next to, Wyoming is an excellent example, where they have houses that are mashed in next to a castle up at the top of Oliver, I think it is, or Ritchie. It's a travesty when you see it, and there are a lot of us, like ourselves, my husband and I, who's looking down at the ground as much as he can.
I'm not fully supportive.
Well, but there's, I just think that we need to be thoughtful about what we're doing, and it starts being thoughtful about protecting our historic value and what makes us distinctive versus those other communities like Wyoming and Terrace Park, and Montgomery and things like that. Is the fact that we've got these fabulous homes, and I think we just need to be more thoughtful. I realize there's a balance between giving young families, or frankly older families, that want to have some more, comfort about their garage and things like that, and or about their house. I think that's important, but it does, because we have to keep up with the conveniences that other communities are providing. But I think there's a balance that in the past I felt like we adhered to more. And the other thing, I've got a bunch of ideas actually about things. I'll just tick off a couple things that as we look at this stuff. Based on our situation next door, at least from our vantage point, there are a couple of things that, and this is an accessory structure that is less than 5 feet from our property line in some cases. Enforcement of the zoning rules, that there is closer monitoring of approved plans to on a regular basis to make sure that the people are conforming to the plans that were approved. That was not the case until I sent an email. Issuing a stop work order when we determined that it's in violation, which it was. And that did happen, but again, we had to get involved and ask for that adherence. or that, you know, action to be taken. I think we need to look at things like, as far as the zoning rules, you know, and I talked about this at the village council meeting a couple weeks ago, but there's something to be said for what is the absolute height of the building that you see from the street. You know, you can talk about 1 stories or 1.5, and whether, you know, 1.5 or 2, and whether it has walls and things like that. But when you know, and I'll pass around if you guys haven't seen it, the structure that's next to us, you know, technically this is supposed to be a 1-story because they didn't put in they didn't put in a floor above. So basically it goes from floor, you know, from the foundation up to the ceiling. But we've got a garage right next to that that's shorter than this structure that's going in. And we have actually a 2nd floor. Now, it doesn't have walls on it, but there's steps that go up to our 2nd floor. I'll pass this picture around. You know, so technically, it's, you know, what they're claiming to have as a 1-story is every bit as tall, and actually, if you get close, you can see it's actually taller by a couple of inches than ours. And yet, you know, so I would say our garage effectively is 1.5 stories, and that should be, which is the red brick building on the right, is 1.5 stories.
I've been in.
Okay, a 1.5 story building is not, accessory building is not allowed, it's not allowed to be that tall. You're not allowed to have, I believe, if I read the rules, that accessory structures cannot be 1.5 stories, or more than 1.5 stories. And ours is 1.5 stories, and that building is taller. Now, granted, there isn't a floor, they're just gonna have the garage, you know, there's no steps to a 2nd floor or anything, but at the end of the day, the absolute height of that structure is taller than a 1.5 story, and it's less than 5 feet, or arguably, they would say, at one side, it's 5 feet from our property line. Well, you know, I just think we need to think real hard about whether that's something we wanna have. We think, you know, we're worried about it from a couple of perspectives. One, we don't think it looks nice from the street, and granted, even if you argue that it is just 1 story because they don't have a floor in, why does the absolute height of that building not make a difference? What you see from the street aesthetically is, you know, I think it should be considered along with what technically is considered 1.5 stories. And then, of course, you know, if that's the case, at a minimum, we would like them to move it away from the property line. You know, right now they're over they're less than 5 feet from our property line, but we would actually like them to push it even further or go into the backyard. And then, you know.
Excuse me a second.
Yeah, sure.
Less than 5 feet, is there a survey that shows that?
Yes. Yes, and
We've been in contact with the property owner.
Okay.
I can up and go through the, yeah.
But that only happened after we had to come and make a big issue about it. That's, you know, and you know, the other thing is, I think that, you know, if we've got historic buildings, our garage, granted, it's a garage, you know, but it's got some cool things about it. It's 113 years old. It's the original doors, the original brick. You know, we tried to maintain the integrity of that property, and it matches our house. So you could say it's part of the package of what you get when you buy our house and our property. And not that we're going anyplace soon, but so why are we not honoring that? And when something like this comes up where they want to, well, actually they asked for, the plan said 7 feet, but the most recent ones, I think, because we only got the approved new plans recently, so that they could actually go 5 feet from our garage. If you don't even think about it from a historic perspective, what about from the standpoint, if you were us, about since they only have gutters on the back side and the front side and no arrangement for downspouts, how they're going to direct the drainage that comes off of that garage roof? Right now, we have a little drain in the center of our driveway that gets compost and things down in it, so we're constant. Sometimes we have a little lake down there, and hey, it's our property, our issue, because it's coming off of our garden space there next to the driveway. But there's no reference in the guidelines to whether they should have any responsibility for handling any kind of drainage. Our building theirs is going to be wood or fabricated materials, and we've got wood on our house, on our garage. You know, what about, granted, I realize there's supposed to be fire code and all kinds of things that are associated with this, but, you know, I mean, I can't help but worry that, you know, another issue might be potentially fire. And then, so jumping away from that, a couple of other things occur to us, and that was, or to me at least. One was, you know, when this was originally presented to you guys, we were not aware of the fact that they were coming and asking for an accessory structure, our neighbors. We had no idea. They didn't say a word to us. In fact, they went so far as to say that they were debating whether to have a garage. So we didn't know for months. We did not have an idea until they started moving the fir trees and things like that. And then again, we weren't shown the plans. They weren't offered to us. But we assumed because they were neighbors and we'd lived next to them for 7 years or something like that, that, you know, that they would do the right thing.
We asked them if they had talked to the neighbors, and they said yes. On almost every single building, I asked that question.
It's all right. It's not a
Well,
requirement.
I didn't hear it in the, I watched the video, so if
Okay,
you
maybe
asked
we
them,
missed
maybe it
it,
was
maybe I
outside
missed
of
it,
the
but I
video.
tried to ask, that's good.
But the point is that, if, you know, if somebody's gonna put in something that significant next to you, whether it's frankly an accessory structure for sure, but I would also suggest if they're gonna put up a fence. I heard there was somebody a week ago that wanted to put up a fence between 2 yards in the grassy area between their driveway and the next one was very narrow. Or even, you know, a driveway. I think that there's, you know, when, Bethany wanted to change from a grassy area to putting in jungle gym equipment, you guys sent out a note, a letter to everybody, I think it was certified or first class, to everybody that lived in the adjoining areas. And I'll bet you that that jungle gym equipment wasn't gonna go right up on the edge of the property line. Why is it that if we're, you know, in the kind of size homes and important investments that we are, why don't we notify neighbors when things of that importance are being requested by somebody? Because you're assuming that everybody's gonna be the good neighbor, but if they wanna mash something in there, and forgive me, but that's what I think that they're doing, why would it be in their best interest to tell us that they're gonna come and ask you for that and have you approve it? Because to be honest with you, if we had known that they were coming on December the 3rd, I think it was.
It was
December
January.
3rd, I would certainly have wanted to see the plans, and I would have requested that you give us a chance to at least look at them.
David, do we still post the agenda for the planning commission on
And-
6 or 7 locations?
And it's in the email newsletter
But you have
on
to
the
know
Fridays
to
before
look
the
for
meetings.
it. You have to know, I mean, 9 times out of 10, I didn't care less what these guys that just were here were talking about. And granted, I did do that. Actually, they said something to me about the fact on the December the 4th, that they had come over here and they had wanted to talk about it, but well, I won't go into it because but I watched every single new, meeting agenda to see what it was that was coming up, thinking that maybe they acted like it didn't happen December the 3rd, based on the comments that they made to me, that they didn't get approval. And so I watched everyone after that, and, they obviously never saw it. But why do we make people jump through hoops? Why don't we, what is so hard about spending, you know, if somebody is at we're at 8:30, if they're at 8:40, why wouldn't you let 8:30 and 8:50, you know, on either side know about?
Julie, everything you're talking about, it involves a comprehensive review of our zoning code. And the most recent thing you're talking about is notification. Should we as a community be required to notify adjoining property owners when something like a shed or a driveway or a jungle gym is being constructed? We don't have that in the code now for accessory structures or driveways, but the Bethany example, that was a conditional use. So that's a particular version or a part of our code that requires notice, direct notice to the neighbors. So if you're advocating that everything that we do be given notice directly to the neighbors, that's a pretty comprehensive change to the zoning code. And on top of that, you've been talking about design issues, setbacks, height, and so forth. That's another example of a pretty comprehensive change to the zoning code. We're talking about a very small change now, setting up a public hearing for that. My point is, if you are passionate enough about making these comprehensive global changes to the zoning code, talk to the mayor, talk to the administrator, and gather a committee and say, we want to do this, how do we do it? Right now, we're just talking about one change to one minor issue that we've noticed in the code. We're really not prepared to talk about these global changes that you're talking about. So again, I would encourage you to get yourself organized, get other people organized, and identify those issues, and talk to the administrator and to the village leadership.
I mean, if I can pull the people together, isn't this sort of, again, I'm happy to do that and to be part of it. I mean, I'm kind of signing up for something myself here, I think. But, you know, everybody that I've talked to that's seen the structure next to us has absolutely agreed that what's there should not have been there, and it should be different. It should be at least pushed in because of its size and things like that. So, I mean, I realize you guys are all volunteers and everything, and that this is just something that you do as a courtesy to the village, but, I mean, I'm sure since you work with these ordinances, what I'm saying resonates with you personally. You may not wanna, I mean, this isn't a small matter. This is, you know, for many people, it is their most important investment, and you technically are a planning committee that's supposed to be determining this stuff. And you're supposed to do it in good, you know, in a way that takes into consideration how to best serve the community.
Well,
And what I'm,
let me add another thought.
It's unmanageable the way it currently exists, the codes.
Let me add another thought to that. Other communities that I've worked in, you know, I do a lot of zoning work in other communities.
Sure.
They have a planning staff, so those professional folks can dedicate their time to finding those issues and troubleshooting it. We don't have a professional planning staff. We have David. But
Thanks,
communities like us, when they
Thanks, Tom.
just David. But when we have communities like ours that don't have a staff and don't have a paid staff to do just that, oftentimes they will, more often than not, they will hire a consultant to do just what you said, in conjunction with a committee such as yours. So again, I come back to my statement. If you can get yourself organized to do that, talk with these folks, and then we'll continue that conversation. But tonight, it's just not going to happen. We're focused on one particular amendment.
Can I ask a question that might make this process easier for you and easier for the commission? Kind of like we're planning on coming to a public hearing for these amendments that we're discussing. If Ms. Mayor were to write up, you mentioned I have 5 specific things: a setback, building height, drainage concern, fire, and notification of construction. If you were to come up with maybe what solution they think would be best for that as proposed changes, would that be something that she could bring to the planning commission to consider for amendment to the code?
Oh, certainly. I don't want to bog down our process here. I want to
Correct.
get this done more quickly.
I agree.
But those are pretty significant changes that
They
you're
are.
talking about. So I don't think that it could be done in just a meeting or two.
Well, yeah,
No.
No.
and the notification, if you put the notification thing in, you're gonna create something that's going to lengthen the amount of time for approvals for
Yeah.
everybody. So people are gonna have to get used to starting further ahead. I'm more of a libertarian than anything else, and if we put this out there and you don't look, it's your fault. Now, I think every neighbor in Glendale should be neighborly enough to say, I'm doing this. When I did my garage, I went to every one of the neighbors, sat down with them, and reviewed the plans and said, this is what I'm doing. And I want to make sure you're okay with it, and I think everybody else should too. It's not government's responsibility to take care of every single thing in the world.
Right, but, I mean, was just talking to somebody the other day that was thinking about putting in a garage, and it didn't even occur to them to take it to their neighbors.
Well, maybe we ought to put that in, but it shouldn't be our responsibility to do everything. The people building it should, get the plan signed by the neighbor, saying, I'm okay with this.
Well, why is it important enough to write in for the case of, sorry, I don't wanna take the meeting, like, for like Bethany? Why is it, why is it?
Because those are conditional uses.
It's a conditional
Or a
use.
specific code.
It's
that
not a,
requires
it's not a
that.
It's a
typical
code,
use.
so if you wanna make a code requirement, recommend a code requirement.
David, there have been a couple of things though that did go awry with this garage. They've been corrected. Would you update planning as to where
Sure.
all that is?
Um,
Just so we all know.
Right. The largest concern is the setback. The property owner and contractor adjusted, we'll say that, from the originally approved plans, which showed the required 5-foot setback from the property line, and eliminated that and encroached on that setback. We know when we were aware of it, we notified them. They have been, and they're in process of bringing the building into conformance with the zoning code and moving the structure to do that. That process is going to take some time, but that is in process right now. So they understand that from the village's perspective, they have to clear that hurdle before they can proceed with any of the kind of continuing building and permitting approvals on the building side. But it was their decision without notification to adjust their site plan. So to speak.
Did the landowner know?
What's that?
Did the owner of the property
I'm not
know?
entirely certain. I believe so, but I'm not entirely
Well,
certain.
and kudos to Julie, noticed it, brought it to the village's attention.
Julie?
Julie
Oh,
Mayer.
Mayor, oh,
Julie
okay,
Mayer.
yeah.
And part of the issue was, I believe the foundation was poured, but no inspection was done
That's
after
correct.
that.
That's my
And they
understanding.
should have called for inspection after the foundation was poured. Probably should have called for
They have to
inspection when the
call
forms
the
were
hole
in.
is
When the
yeah.
forms were in,
Yeah.
and they didn't do that, they just continued.
Okay.
What about height?
Excuse me, before you get off setback, am I correct that the 5-foot setback we require applies to the foundation, in other words?
The
front
eaves.
of the
Actually, it's the eaves.
The eaves.
So they're moving
Is
in,
it?
they're
Mhm.
moving in to match
I thought it was
eaves.
just the
Ah,
foundation.
okay, so, but,
They're going to
The only reason I
conform-
ask this is because
So-
in 1997, when I had this conversation with Wally,
Hmm.
he said it was the foundation was
That's what I
5 foot
thought.
south.
Okay.
Because in my being a good neighbor interpretation, when I built my garage, I moved it 18 inches further, so 6.5 feet, so
Mhm.
that my 18-inch overhang.
That's
met the
what the
5-foot
original drawing
requirements.
was, Tom. It was 7 feet,
But
was the drawing
That's
that was
what-
made.
Mhm.
But then Wally explained it to me that it was the foundation, because somewhere in the language currently, there's something that says, it doesn't apply to overhangs, porches, that sort of thing. There's somewhere in there,
Chimney.
which I can find it. But
Okay.
overhangs, normal decorative extensions,
That's what I
which,
thought too.
So-
Their
decorative
original
extensions-
original approval was 7 feet, and their revised is going to conform with that 7 foot. So, what's that?
It
yes,
wasn't just 5
that's my
feet,
understanding.
Their drawing was
Yes.
seven.
They
The drawing was
are going
seven.
to.
They're going
They're going.
7 feet.
They're
For
going
the-
to.
for the
Yes, they're going
foundation.
to
My
bring the building
point
into.
is here, we're
conform.
discussing around, my interpretation of it is that the foundation is 5 feet off the property line, that the overhangs and decorative elements can go beyond that.
Okay,
Let's-
we'll
we can fix
navigate.
that one, too.
We'll look into that.
Yeah,
We'll navigate
yeah, that's
that.
okay.
Correct.
David, do we have any?
Another thing, that 5-foot dimension off or on small lots of houses, when you have small lots, if you go beyond the 5 feet, you can't build a garage big enough or can't access to it. So 5 feet was the minimum, which is the same thing we did for driveways at one point, if you recall. So, anyway, it's,
Do we have any, can we take any action against the builder?
We're not
The
taking
builder
action
is the
against.
owner,
the-
the contractor is the owner.
Oh, well then
We're
Well,
the
the
village
builder
is
is going
handling
to
it
fix
directly
it
with
at their own
with the
cost.
property owner.
Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
at the owner's cost. We don't need to
Got
get
it.
involved in that.
Got
They're
it.
moving it on their own.
Got it.
What about height, David? There was a question about height.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So height, as we measure building height, is measured, and there's a term for it, and I never can think of it, but it is essentially, if you think of the peak of the roof, it's measuring the center point of that peak. And then that point down to grade is calculating building height. On this plan, it's about 13 feet and a couple of inches. So 1.5 story, you figure a story is 10 feet, so that would be 15 feet. So based on the plans at 13, and like I said, it might have been a half or a little over, from that center point is conforming with the 1.5 stories.
So
just accessory
technically-
structures or homes as well.
That's how we measure all structures.
All
Because,
structures.
like, for example, a
But-
1.5 story home, the foundation comes out of the ground 3 feet. before you start the one story, before you start the half story.
Right.
Well,
It'd
They-
be great to have a max height, if we wanna
So-
tackle that.
That would be,
Because technically this building conforms, but
So, for years, I've complained that specific drawings and dimensions and calculations are better than not having that. So
Yep.
I'm all for specifying dimensions,
Okay.
percentages, whatever it is.
well, that's something you could tackle.
You know, look at those
That's
houses,
it.
look at the houses on Warwick, that it's
Yes.
6 feet or so before the,
Above,
before the,
above grade,
before
yes.
the first floor starts.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry about that segue, but there was.
No,
some
that's fine, man.
corrections
Thank you.
that
Along
were
those
handled.
same comment, I'll make it again this month. I think we should codify that we require a survey for any building project, period. Fence, building project.
I think this had a survey and it had a drawing with
No, I
specific
think we are
dimensions.
required as part of the submittal package
Sure.
when they bring it to us.
And
All right.
I would
to
like
be
to see
clear,
that
you
to
approved
council.
7 feet from the property line and they built it to 5 from the very beginning, so just, you know, when
So
you
what
think
I
you-
miss, I
It
miss.
didn't
What
get
you approved
inspection.
saved it when it was caught.
Right,
miss that.
Right, okay.
right.
So are they tearing out the whole foundation and moving it?
My understanding is they're going to slide the building itself, cut part of the foundation and pour new foundation
But they
on the
never got
opposite
the
side.
foundation inspected, so why?
No,
no, they did. They got the
Yeah,
non-conforming one
the
inspected.
non-conforming.
Now they have to go get an
Oh,
additional
I thought
inspection.
somebody said
They-
they poured the foundation without getting
Well,
it
after the fact.
inspected.
They did, and then it was inspected
Initially they did.
after the fact.
And it was
Inspected after the fact.
after the fact.
So they dug out next to it and
So-
all that stuff.
As far as I know, I didn't get the details
So
of
with
that
this
inspection,
person,
but yes.
this person's not, because my understanding, when I did my garage, they had to inspect the forms.
Yeah.
Of course. yeah.
So this person didn't have the forms
Bypass that,
inspected.
yes.
So this is somebody, this is an owner who's playing general contractor who's not following the rules.
And
Right.
technically, if you
Yes.
move the entire structure over 2 feet, it no longer sits on the center line of the footing, the foundation wall. So therefore, if you move it over, you need a new footing and foundation
Right.
wall.
That's what
I-
they'll have to do.
Yeah, David, I wouldn't agree with that. I'd make them tear the whole foundation out and redo it, because this will not be,
Well,
structurally safe.
That's a building department decision based on the Ohio Building Code, so I'm gonna defer to their review of what their submittals are and their expertise on that. That's not,
I would wanna know what they approved though, because there are ways that they can tell whether there's rebar in it. They can tell that, and they should have to dig down next to it and make sure that the footers are the right depth and all that stuff, and
as we have always performed building inspections, the building inspector is responsible for the review of the plans that are submitted as well as the work that's done on site. And then if there are, in the event of this or any other case where work is completed without checking the first box or doing the first step, then the property owner or contractor, whomever, is required to provide documentation or evidence or verify in some way to their satisfaction at the risk of their building inspector's license that what they're approving is satisfactory and does conform with the code. That's their process. That's not a process that we're
Okay.
directly involved in. So as far as what's happening specifically with this property, if they're issuing approval on it, then we're safely assuming that those steps are
But
taken.
the question to me is, are we saying the guy approves it, check off, or please help me understand what steps were taken so I can understand this for the
That's what I'd like to
future?
know.
That's
Yeah.
two different things. One is, okay, it's your responsibility, I'm gonna hold you responsibility, check. The other one is penetrating the issue so we really understand it for the future. And that's two different things, David. You
I mean,
see,
the inspector might have just said, you know, you screwed up, and I'm sure it's okay, whatever. I'd wanna know that the inspector really did his job, because I was in the construction business for 40-something years, and I knew there were inspectors that would let things slide, and there were inspectors that
Right.
wouldn't. And, I had inspectors that would say, just take a picture of the hole, with a tape measure in it, and that'll be fine, and then go ahead and pour, and I'll look at it later, you know. And, you know, there's different inspectors have different requirements.
yeah.
Thank you.
Dan, I don't mean to be angry at you, this isn't about you,
Well-
but we hold them responsible, but the issue is, if that inspector lets it go by and these people sell this house, then what happens, and then the next person gets screwed, right?
Well, and that would be the purview of the building inspector, and frankly, not the planning commission, to verify that they're executing their responsibilities as the building inspector, and
I'm just
their
saying, I wanna know what steps
their
they took
signature.
to accept this
I-
foundation.
I want to also understand: is this something that's going to be frequently requested from the planning commission for construction projects? The verification of the building department review.
No, I think when we have a problem. I mean, my sense is that the new inspectors are much more lax, having done several things at the Glendale Lyceum than the previous inspectors.
Okay, I haven't had experience with them. It's not, it shouldn't be too onerous for NIC, is NICR?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for them to issue a report that says this is the corrective action for this foundation and what was done. Is the additional slab that was poured, is it rebarred into the existing? What's the footer look like? It wouldn't be too onerous for them to answer that question.
Right.
And if something's done correctly from the get-go, it's not gonna be a problem. This one's
Right.
just an unusual
Yeah,
circumstance.
exactly. I believe from my history that anytime you get smoke into something, by the time you see smoke, the fire's already burning. And especially when you have an individual who's playing his own general contractor and clearly trying to cut corners,
That's a problem.
that we need to bore in, because then that sends a message.
Well, we can ask the question.
Yeah.
We can ask the question.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you,
Right,
gentlemen.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wish to address the matter of the amendment that we talked about 20 minutes
Making the
ago, 40
guidelines
minutes ago?
applicable to new construction.
Right.
102.
Yes, sir.
Are you referring to the amendment that you were just discussing, or?
Not her amendments.
No,
the one that we were
That you were discussing
Yeah.
regarding.
The guidelines?
construction?
Yes.
Okay, I do want to address that.
Name for record?
Glenn Parish?
Okay. I knew that, but I don't know if she could.
No, I think people will recognize me wherever I go in the
Two
village.
N's.
2 N's, 2 R's.
Oh.
I wasn't gonna say anything about this, but once you brought up regarding, and you guys brought up about new construction and things within the historical district, that's very important, and I understand that. I do know that recently because I'm at 100 and there is property next door, 94, that is owned by the village. When I moved in, I asked for a survey, which I was told they don't have a survey. And then later on, I was talking before his untimely death with Tom, and he showed me properties around the village that the village owns that needed surveys. They weren't really sure of the property lines. And as such, my property line, I wanted to determine where my property line was. And since I did not have that, I went back and did some research on the 100 Washington Avenue and the property that was being maintained by 100 Washington. I also looked at in the auditor's office of the property as it is listed and the photograph that shows where the village was maintaining a certain portion of 94 Washington. When I started working on that, I could not get into my basement because the vegetation that was there was encroaching upon the wall, and I requested that the village cut it back. They started to, and they stopped. Recently though, because I am still moving on my initial plans, I needed to move that out of there. And since there are other plans of which I can't speak on right now, that states what I have to do going forward. Because I have already moved that, I have gone and I have put markers on what I have been able to determine as the property that was being maintained by 100 Washington.
Did a surveyor put those markers down?
I did.
Okay. Have you hired a surveyor? Have you retained a surveyor?
That's inconsequential.
No.
Absolutely, because if the village has a survey, all I'm looking for is that line.
The village doesn't have to survey a property, you have to survey the property.
They do have to survey the property, any property that is owned by a municipality that will be subsequently used for construction has to have a survey.
What do you
Now,
mean it'll subsequently be used for construction?
that's what I'm saying.
Who said it's gonna be used for construction?
Because the planning commission already said that.
What did
They
you say?
have in their plans to, and when I was in the meeting, we were asked, what were you gonna do with that property? Well, we were initially trying to put 7 houses on there. So therefore, that had already been discussed.
Who said that?
Sir, I don't believe the
There's no-
village has any plans
I
to build on the
wasn't-
property.
Plan on the part of the village.
You are
I was
the
there,
one-
but there were no plans. There was
There is-
discussion
No, no,
about
no, there was
possibilities.
just-
The
Exactly.
possibility.
Well, that's not
So if
plans.
there are
But that's
not
possibilities,
plans.
No,
then
no,
the
no.
foundation for possibilities has to be establishing where this property is. When it was taken over by the village in 2013, there was never ever any survey done. In fact, when I went to Columbus and looked up those properties, except for the surveyors who did the Dooley subdivision and stuff, all they have is the properties. They don't have a survey either. Neither does Columbus. They say that there has never ever been.
Let me
a survey.
get right to the point. And with all due respect, that has nothing to do with the planning commission. Ownership of village property is entirely within the domain of the village council. They meet at 7 o'clock. You're welcome to stay and address this issue with them. But there's really nothing that we can do
Oh, I
about
wasn't-
the survey.
You brought up that, and so.
No,
therefore-
you brought it up.
No, actually, you were already discussing it before
Survey?
I got here.
In the context.
Is that not
No,
true?
we were not talking about village property and your property.
No.
The word survey came up in a previous conversation, but we were
I'm
not talking about your
survey.
property.
I'm talking about just speaking about my property.
We weren't talking about your property.
If you wanna find out the borders of your property,
Get a survey.
I
Get a
already know
survey.
what they are.
Get a survey.
get a survey.
No. I already know what they are.
Without a survey.
Without a survey?
Just let me, I already know what that property survey, let's put it this way, what the property will show.
Well, then why are we
The
here?
fact-
Why are you talking to us? This is, if you know where it is, then I don't know what can be accomplished with this conversation.
Well.
If you dispute where that
basically-
line is, if you think the
So
village
what
has
you're
an
saying
incorrect.
is that this isn't historical preservation, this is now council.
Correct. I'm saying that
Then I
ownership
will-
of village
then
property.
I will hold my
Sure.
comments
Okay,
until the
thank
next
you,
meeting.
thank you. All right, this started with conversation about amending, or at least reviewing amendments to the zoning code that would address new construction and guidelines. I'd like to make a motion that we direct the administrator through the village solicitor to look into that possibility and to establish a public hearing November, maybe December,
As soon as possible.
as soon as possible.
I second that.
Is there further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any other business, members of the commission? Anyone else in the audience wish to address the commission? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.